Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to Olainfarm Investor Conference webinar about financial results and company's activities of the third quarter of year 2017. Today we are hosted by Olainfarm Management Board member Salvis Lapiņš. Before I give the floor to Salvis, a short reminder about the agenda of the webinar. As always, we will start with the company's presentation, after which Salvis will answer all your questions. If you would like to use this unique opportunity to ask a question directly to Mr. Lapiņš, please use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. All questions will be addressed after the presentation. However, you can send the questions in during the presentation. Salvi, I invite you to start the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see quite a crowd in this webinar environment. I'm sorry for the delay. As you know, this webinar was initially planned for early December, but for a number of events, we decided to postpone this until we have a little bit more clarity about many issues that you may want to hear about. But let us start with what we normally start. At the end of the day, it's still a third quarter webinar that we are hosting today. So let's have a bit of a look at the third quarter. See first, let's look at the sales. I have 27.7 million euros, which is clearly the best third quarter in our history. Sales have increased by about 10% compared to the third quarter of last year, to which pharmacies added 2.7 after consolidation. Silver Nose added 0.9 million and Tono sales added 2.3 million. Well, profit picture is not as nice. According to preliminary data, it's 0.9 million euros, a reduction by a huge 46% compared to third quarter of last year. Main factors influencing that are increased sales costs and administrative costs. I mean, they in total increased by 2.5 million. And main one-off factors during third quarter were $500,000 forex loss from both ruble and US dollar, and provisions of 0.9 for the other companies that we have acquired. In terms of profit, this is the weakest quarter since the end of 2014. 12-month EBITDA is at 19 million and some stabilization you can see at quite a low level compared to what it was in 2015 and 2016. EBITDA margin at 16%, which is also a slight stabilization, also not on that high level as we were used to a few years ago. We can only expect some improvement after. You remember that the last number of quarters or number of years, we have been doing extensive provisions for things like Russian receivables, Ukrainian receivables, some other assets on our balance sheet. So some more or less decent improvement in these numbers you can only expect when this period of provisions and write-offs has left the 12-month trailing period. Now, if you look at the sales by countries in third quarter alone, you see a lot more concentration in two major markets, that would be Russia and Latvia. They both combined at 10% of total, 10% share of total sales. Ukraine is again down to 7%. Remember, it used to be 11. It was 11% in the second quarter. Poland and Italy is no longer among top 10 markets in Q3, and instead of those, now you see Germany and Lithuania. Belarus is relatively stable at during all these quarters. It fluctuates between 7 and 9%. If you look at the products, see Nermidine has increased nicely to 22%. Norfen, our second best-selling product, has dropped from 20% share to 17% share. Adaptol, Furamag, Etazine have increased significantly, while paraminosalicic acid is very seriously down to 2% compared to 5-6% it used to be in previous quarters. And Memantine is no longer in top 10 selling products, and it has been replaced by Remantadine as probably the flu season is approaching. Now, if you look at 9 months in total, I have a total sales of 90 million, increased by 15% compared to 9 months of last year, to which total sales added 6.2 million, pharmacies added 15.7 million, or 7 million net, and Zoonos added 3.3 million net. Now, if you look at the net profit in 9 months, that's according to preliminary numbers, it's at 6.6 million euros, which is again a reduction by 15% compared to 9 months of last year. Again, the same factors influencing these numbers are forex loss in 9 months, approximately 2.5 million euros, and provisions of 1.3 million euros for mainly for recently acquired daughter companies. And in terms of profit, these are the weakest first 9 months since 2010. So still the sales, as you remember, are growing. So let us have a look at where the growth is coming from. You see most of our main markets, main products are growing. In monetary terms, it's Furmak Forsol that added 1.1 million and Ulfan that added 0.7 million. And Etazin added also nicely, a little less, but still 0.6 million euros in 9 months. In relative terms, most growth comes from memantine of more than 100%. 1,4,3.5 dimethyladimetane, I don't know how can I pronounce that, added 45% of our sales, and Furmak Forsol another 15%. But you can even visually see quite a significant drop of para-aminosilicic acid. It has dropped by 29%, or 1.6 million, and Remantadine has dropped by 200,000. And so all the others, of course, in relative terms, provided a major reduction of 45%, also followed by neobidantam, reduction by 37%, and antituberculosis para-aminosilicic acid by almost 30%. Total sales of our products in 9 months were 57.2 million, which is a slight reduction by 1% compared to our sales made during last year. If you look at the countries, 10 out of 15 countries are growing, and basically there are no news in that respect. Ukraine and Uzbekistan are still the 2 main countries that have demonstrated considerable sales reduction. In monetary terms, Ukraine's sales lost 4.7 million, and Uzbekistan lost 0.4 million. Whereas 3 top markets, namely Russia, Latvia, and Belarus, have added nicely. And Russia alone has added 5.4 million in 9 months to our sales. Latvia has added 2.4, and the Netherlands, and as you know, it's really our anti-tuberculosis shipments to the WHO. Netherlands have added another 2.2 million. This is how our main daughter companies have been performing during this period. Latvia's Apteeka made a sales of 15 million, gross profit of 3.8, and net profit of 0.5. Total Celest plus Celest Medical have made a total sales of more than 9 million euros and net profit of 1 million. And Zoonos has added 3.4 million and net profit of 100,000 euros. That is as of 9 months. And now the first question, which is quite a traditional one, and that is, what do you think? How do you evaluate our third quarter or 9 months in that third quarter performance? Do you think these numbers are better than expected, just as expected, or worse than expected? Well, I kind of know. I think I know what your answer most likely will be, but I'll still like to ask you to take a second and click your choice. So that's well, we ourselves don't feel terribly happy with our performance in Q3, but maybe you were more pessimistic originally, and you would say that you were quite positively surprised. So whatever your answer is, ask Elizabeth to give you a few more seconds for that before we move to the next slides. yeah, I think it was enough time to make the choices. Thank you. So, well, recent events, there will be no special focus on something as we normally do in webinars, because the amount of recent events has been quite significant ones, and mostly unpleasant and even tragic. For those of you who have been following our management reports, you've noticed that we have revised our profit guidances yet again. We're still quite behind the schedule, even behind the adjusted schedule, for pretty much the same reasons that I did refer to. Now, the new projections for what the end of the year result would look like are that basically we do not amend the sales projections, as sales projections are going very close to the schedule. However, we are having a look at the profitability numbers, and currently we have declared that we see that both consolidated and non-consolidated excuse me, net profit will be 10 million euros. Let me remind you that after the adjustment, we plan that there will be 11 million euros net profit for standalone and 13.5 million net profit for the group. For those of you whom we met during our roadshow a month ago, we at that time told that we believe the net profit would be between 9 and 10, depending on whether we will be able to reverse our deferred tax liabilities via P&L. I mean, we got a confirmation from the auditors that we can do that via P&L, so that means that our sort of guidance for the end result for 2017 is now 10 million euros. So, well, it's kind of strange to ask this question on January 11, but still, let me ask you: do you think that do you feel that 10 million euros of net profit is something that we will achieve? Is it like a realistic assumption? Is it pessimistic, and you think we will actually be able to achieve something more? Or is it too optimistic, and in fact we will not be able to make even 10 million euros in net profit? So please take in your time and click your choice before we move ahead to the other things that have happened since I last spoke to you in the webinar. Yeah, just a few more seconds. Thank you. Yeah, let's move ahead. The other recent events, like I said, we have a traditional Baltic Nordic roadshow at the end of last year, in the beginning of December. We met you guys in Warsaw, Stockholm, Helsinki, and Tallinn. Unfortunately, the last leg of the roadshow, which was scheduled for Vilnius, did not happen. In total, we had more than a dozen meetings, and at that time, among other things, I was informing you about resignation, that this kind of decision that was changed very soon after that, for a very sad reason, which I believe you have heard about, is that Mr. Valeris Malagins, a long-term chairman, main owner, main visionary, shockingly passed away on December 9. And indeed, for all the people that were around, this was more than a shock at that point. For those of you who have been following our company since it was listed, and it was listed back in 1996, you know that his personal input of everything, time and effort and money and nerves and health and whatever in making the company the way it looks now, the way it performs now in absolutely all the senses. I mean, his input is just tremendous. And he's also locally very well known, not only as owner, the person who privatized Olainfarm, not only as a leader of Olainfarm, but also was an opinion leader in many areas, not only pharmaceuticals, but in business in general. He was a philanthropist, supporting both himself and with Olainfarm very many events in all aspects of life, that be culture or sports or education or science or you name it. And indeed, I believe thousands of people, not only his friends and colleagues and relatives, but people throughout Latvia and general public will really greatly miss this fantastic person that I personally had a great honor to work with for a number of years. So indeed, after this unfortunate event, I felt like the board and the council and friends and relatives and management had to really come together and do the utmost to make sure that all his legacy and of course what's publicly seen, Olainfarm is the largest piece of sort of tangible legacy that Valerie left, has to be taken the very best care of. And so the previous decision of resignation was, after a number of talks, a number of requests, was changed quite instantly. Very frequently after this event, I have a question about what is the current status. How do things look like now in Olainfarm, and what's really happening and what's management doing? And like I said before, both board and council and top management and the closest partners of Olainfarm have demonstrated very great unity immediately since the event, and both board and council have demonstrated that they're not only willing but absolutely capable to organize themselves instantly, take a very serious and pragmatic approach to things, and are absolutely able to manage the company as smoothly as possible before we have new owners. However, having said that, it is a very strong belief in both board and management that we should refrain from any major decisions before that happens. Would that be a decision on investing somewhere? Would it be a decision to divest from some assets, or any other major decision before we have a mandate for such things by new owners? However, and I would really like to stress this very, very strongly, because there are many speculations and semi-speculations going around about this, is that all the projects, all the investments, all the data companies that we have already started, that we have undertaken, including the other companies, including new products, including ourselves going to new markets, will of course be continued as planned. We will work on development of Silvanos. We will work in development of our healthcare companies, Diomed and Health Center of Poland, and we are dedicated to develop Tonus Elast even further, and all the other dot companies that we have. So all the projects that were actually already started and launched, they of course will be continued. Also, a very important question, because that is related to ownership of Olainfarm, is what are really it's really the current status of things in that respect. Now, let me tell you that Mr. Maligins himself owned 27% of Olainfarm. Sia Alma Farm was a company that was 100% owned by Mr. Maligins, owned another 40% of Olainfarm. According to the public information, Mr. Maligins had left a testament, and that testament will be made public on January 16. When that is made public, only then we will know what his will was in respect of recipients of the inheritance, of the heirs, and whether or not he has put some limitations to his assets to be inherited, including shares in Olainfarm and Olainfarm. How would they be split? Would there be some limitations to sales, mergers, whatever? So that will be happening in less than a week, and I believe since this event is, I believe, going to be attended by many people, I believe that very soon after that will happen, we will have more information about what his last will in this respect was. So what will happen next? The further activities. So as I said, testament will be made public on January 16th. Then the notary, according to how I was explaining things, may decide on certain time within which all claims to be submitted regarding the inheritance. Those could be creditors' claims. Those could be claims of heirs that feel that they deserve something else, and so there will be time limit set for that. And if the process of new heirs stepping into their rights takes long enough period of time, the court may decide on appointing the guardian of the inheritance, and in that case, such guardian would have similar rights to the actual owner. So, having said that, I don't believe that, since all those things take a certain amount of time, it is not expected that we'll have a clear new owner for majority shares of Olainfarm before middle of this year. And that, of course, depends on whether there are claims and how long all the legal processes take. So how do we look at 2018? And this is something that was pretty much decided before Mr. Lenin passed away, is that we saw the worsening margins, and therefore the two aspects that we are planning to make a particular focus this year. One of them would be cost cutting and some minor price increases in some markets. Growth via acquisitions has been put on hold for a time being, and we're more focusing on consolidation of assets to fully take advantage of all the advantages and synergies that there are with daughter companies. Just recently on the board, we rediscussed things, and our intention really is that dividends will be paid in 2018. And what is quite sure is they're not going to be as generous as they were in 2017. So for next few years, the growth we expect will be coming from price increases that I referred to previously. Some organic growth that we still plan for one, since we continue with marketing in many countries where we started just recently. So there is a place for organic growth. And we still expect that this year we will launch a few products in Turkey, and that also will add to our growth for next couple of years. The budget of the group or the company has not been finalized yet, but from all the drafts that are circulating around, all of them are planning for financial improvements in all the key indicators. But that's only a sort of near to medium term plans. Of course, longer term developments, longer term plans, approaches to many things, to all the things, of course, will be very much dependent on the owners. This is now quite possible that the minority shareholders, as we used to call them, will have a lot bigger role, because the chances are that all the block of 67% might not be in single hands. So I would therefore like to invite all of you who are shareholders of Olainfarm also take a more active role in actually coming up and shareholders meetings and explaining what your belief is, how where the company should be growing, and be active in that respect too. So therefore, my last question for today is, what is your feeling towards the near and medium-term development of Olainfarm? Are you optimistic? Because you know, things obviously will be different, and that's also a possibility that things will improve further. Are you careful optimist? Or you believe things will not change a lot, or maybe you're slightly scared, or maybe you're a total pessimist. You believe that things from here are only going downwards. So please take your time. Again, a few seconds for voting. I'm really interested in the result of this particular vote, because you know, for me, the trust of our partners in the investor communities is really important, and this is now a point in time when this is particularly important. So please take some more time to vote. And well, I feel like you may have lots of questions, so therefore, like I said, for that reason too, I decided that this time I'll try to dedicate more time for that. I see the number of attendees is now 46, so it's 47. So I believe there is an interest, and yeah, I'm all yours in that sense. So as much as I can answer, I'll try to answer all the questions you may have, given that I know the answer. Well, I think it was we've given you enough time to vote, Elizabeth. Thank you. Yeah. So so I suggest we start with questions now. Elizabeth.
Yes, Salve, thank you for the presentation. Now I will proceed with the questions in the order they were received. A reminder to those who haven't yet submitted their questions, you can do it in the questions section in the settings panel zone. So the first question is there any other new company acquisition in the plans?
Yeah, so as like I said, both board and the council share the opinion that for the time being we should refrain from any major investments. So I would say that all the work related to major investments or divestments, for that matter, has now been really put on hold. However, I mean, things like acquisition of pharmacies and those size of companies, it's pretty much a routine exercise for us. So I believe that should there be good offers, we will continue with such smaller acquisitions. But and I really want to emphasize this: all the companies that are part of the group, all the development plans that we had for them, as long as they don't include major investments, all those investment plans, development plans are of course continuing. Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you for the answer. And the next question is, how big is the total amount of overdue loans? How much is overdue for 30+ days?
Well, we don't have any overdue loans in that respect. We are servicing our obligations on time, and the people that we have lent money have not been late so far. So we do not have any overdue loans. Elizabeth?
Was there any change in loans to management after the last dividend payouts in December 2017?
No, unfortunately not, because dividends were paid after the death of Mr. Maligins, meaning that his accounts, of course, were a part of inheritance, and whatever cash is accumulated in those accounts, of course, is a part of inheritance. And just like all the other assets that he had will be distributed to heirs. However, the debt of about 2.8 million euros is also inherited. So there's no reason to believe that There are no reasons to believe that something that we will not be able to recover that. So both the assets and the debt is inherited. So we believe that as far as that loan is concerned, we are in more than good position to recover it. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Any issues, problems with distributors or partners?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. One thing that Mr. Baligins did over the last number of years was he created a very professional, very professional board that was, and the upper management, which is totally capable to work whether or not he's present here or not. And that includes all communication with partners, both local and foreign, from all parts of the world that we work with. I mean, historically, many of them, of course, were generated in the times when he was pretty much in the process of creating the company or developing it. But for the last number of years, all the managers are capable enough to maintain those contacts themselves. So it's been slightly more than a month, and I haven't heard of any disruption in any of our sales because of that. Elizabeth?
Thank you. And I just received a correction to the second question, that it was meant not overdue loans, but overdue receivables. So the question is, how big is the total amount of overdue receivables?
Well, I don't have that data in front of me right now. I could probably, when we'll publish the recording of this webinar tomorrow, I could probably add those numbers there too. But there are some markets that some partners that are always late, and formally that number overdue might be reasonably big, but then again, at the end of the day, most of them pay. So as of now, as far as overdue receivables are concerned, I don't really see any big imminent problem that we haven't provided for already, and by that I mean, of course, Ukraine. So all the others are going pretty much as a normal course of business or close to that. Elizabeth? Thank you for the answer. And the next question is, which would be the biggest risks for the company in 2018? Yeah, I would say let's say there are no major risks. They're nothing much different from 2017 as far as business is concerned. I would say that, of course, we still have a lot of Russian ruble exposure. And I would say that, for that matter, Forex risk is important, especially since we have elections coming up in Russia. And, you don't really know what might be happening both before the elections or after the elections. So like as a one single risk factor, I would really point to that one. Elizabeth? Thank you. What are the priorities in 2018? Yeah, the sort of number one priority at the moment is for the board to make sure that company is fully up and running, no disruptions, no doubts about company's abilities to until that's okay. Everything's okay, Elizabeth? Yes, everything is all right. Cool. Good. So yeah, really the number one task is not to allow any even the slightest shade of doubt about company's ability to perform in all the senses until we have new owners. And like I said, but since there will be no, chances are there will be no one major shareholder anymore. So chances are, and really encourage the small, especially financial shareholders, financial institutions, to be a bit more active in that respect. So the priority is to make this sort of, let's call it a transition, as smooth and unnoticeable as possible. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So the next question is it clear how the reversion of deferred tax liabilities will be counted in Q4 results? Are there differences for the parent compared to subsidiaries?
Yeah, so this was the unclear thing when we went on a roadshow in December. Now, like I said, it is clear with auditors that the deferred tax liabilities will be reversed via P&L, meaning that they will add to Q4 profits, or so therefore profits guidance for 2017 is not 9 million but 10 million. Why there is no major difference between subsidiaries and parent company in terms of net profit is the fact that all three major those companies of ours, namely Silvanos, Latvijas Aptieka, and Tonus, have paid significant dividends to us. Therefore, the difference is almost none, because the parent company has also an increased income, which was daughter's company's income last year. Yeah, so I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Can you discuss the competitive environment in Russia and the Baltic countries? Are there new pharma competitors? Are they major global companies?
Well, both. Would it be Baltics or Russia or worldwide? It's not really I'd say, like I say sometimes, everybody is competitor and nobody is competitor at the same time, because competition is really between the products. Most of pharma companies have several products, and if you look at our product list, for instance, then out of our 50+ products, in terms of indications, some products are overlapping with others and some are not. So the competitive environment, yeah, it's a really general question. Well, in each market, you still have your own players that have been stronger with their products in one market and less strong in other ones. One thing that maybe makes a difference between CIS countries and EU countries, in very general terms, and even that difference is disappearing gradually, is that up until quite recently, CIS countries much more relaxed in terms of what they require in terms of GMP standards from the producers that are selling their product in those countries. Therefore, you could have some producers that might not necessarily keep the highest production standards, and therefore could be somewhat cheaper than the others, meaning that overall the farm market in countries where such requirements are not strictly required are cheaper. But like I said, this is gradually changing as well, and CIS countries are also applying tougher and tougher requirements to farm producers, meaning that only best quality products will remain in those markets, meaning that one of the side effects of that is, of course, that farmer market prices for medicines will increase. Yeah, that's a bit.
Thank you. What is the perspective of the acquired industry in Belarus?
Yeah, currently it's undergoing all the formality processes regarding the registration of products with Belarusian company being as alternative packaging site. To the best of my knowledge, the premises itself have been approved by Belarusian authorities quite recently, a few months ago. So now we have submitted the files where that site is named as alternative packaging site. So once that amendment to registration file is approved, we will organize packaging on that site, and that site will start operating according to intentions that we had when we bought it. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Could you please provide a bit more color on the planned financial improvement in 2018? That is, how tangible that could be.
Well, like I said, this there's still lots of unclear things about how much it is we are going to exactly spend on marketing, and Russian ruble is of course another unclear thing, but currently we plan for unconsolidated sales of 100 million, and yeah, we clearly see an improvement in bottom line compared to 2017 as well, but there are too many factors still that we haven't decided upon, we haven't agreed on assumptions about, so I will not really like not to go into much greater detail about that at this point in time. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Could you give more information on the management changes in Silvanos?
Yeah, it's really let's say the necessity to consolidate between different assets that are somehow created there, meaning Sia Silvanos and Sia Longo, and yeah, the board felt that what we really need in terms in order to strengthen the positions of Silvanos, because those of you who follow the financials of Silvanos, they haven't been doing that very nice in 2017. So we really felt like we need to strengthen or replace the management with people that have a longer term Silvanos experience, and that's exactly what we did. Yeah, we'll see how that works out, because Silvanos is heavily dependent on cough and cold medicines, and the season of cough and cold was in the middle, and really felt this is important to be implemented quite soon. Elizabeth?
Thank you. All questions are answered. So, as always, recording of the webinar will be available in the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel and then company's announcements. Salvi, thanks for spending the last hour with us. And participants, thank you. Yes, Salvi.
Yeah, no questions in the chat line, in the webinar chat line?
They were answered.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, I hope I managed to answer all of your questions. And the issue of the one question that remained unanswered was about the overdue receivables, and we'll figure out if we can have an answer by tomorrow, 10 o'clock, when we plan to publish the report. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Salvi. And that's it for today. And participants, thank you for joining.
Thank you.